Well, week 2 of this conversation, People Skills, and this is a conversation that matters to all of us. While we're only talking about this for 2 weeks, the impact of these conversations is really significant to all of our lives. It doesn't matter what we believe about God. We recognize that we live with people and people live with us, and our ability to engage and interact with people matters. And so it forces us to all ask the question, how good are we with people? What do we really like with people? Do we have high emotional intelligence, high skills as we relate on a day-to-day? And the impact of this is across all of our entire lives. And we're not talking about manipulating people or taking advantage of people, but we are talking about our ability to shape, connect, and influence other people. And so as we think about this, we laid this out last weekend, but we want to put this in front of you, that this thought is just true, that your influence with others is limited or lifted by your people skills. That your influence with others is limited or lifted by your people skills. So if you want to shape, direct, influence anyone towards anything, whether it's to a product or another person or a position or a posture, your ability to do that is either going to be better or worse based on how good you are with people. In fact, your family, your friendships, and even your financial future are connected to this reality. Like, how good are you with people? And how do you do as you navigate all the things that show up in the relationships that you have? And as Christians, as followers of Jesus, this also matters deeply to us because people skills impact our ability to live out the one another's. You know, like accept one another, forgive one another, encourage one another, confront one another, all those things. Our ability to do that well is built on our people skills. And then ultimately, as followers of Jesus, we've been saying that this matters not just for how we interact with each other, but how we interact with the world. A lot of conversation over the last several weekends here at Grace about this idea of eternal and external eyes, how we really want to make sure that we understand that we get to connect people to God. But part of that connecting people to God is built on our influence with people. Do people trust us? Do people see us as people that they'd want to listen to? I mean, ultimately, we're telling people a story about the good news of God, about what he created and what's happened and what he's ultimately going to do and how Jesus fits into all that. But our ability to be able to tell people about that is connected to the influence, to the audience people will give us. And so we have to love them well. And we love them well through our people skills. That they feel seen and heard and valued and all of those things. And then ultimately, if we love people well, then something happens that's unique. A lot of times they end up liking us. And that matters because we said that there's this connection between being liked by and then ultimately listened to. And so we want to cultivate these people skills. And last weekend we dug into one of these. And if you missed it, we really want to encourage you, go to our app or our website. It'll allow you to lean into this conversation where we talked about this reality, that whenever you hear the name of someone, you think of something. You hear someone, you think of something, and that matters because whatever thought you put in your head about them, that thought is sown ultimately as a thought, but then was reaped into an action. And we said it's so important that we learn to think about people in a really good way, a positive way. And so we talked about this phrase over and over, the people skill, that if we could learn to think well, then that would allow us to treat well. And so again, if you missed it, I want to encourage you to go back and listen to that, all right? As we move to this week's people skill, I've said this statement or some form of this out loud this week. I've thought it this week. Probably many of you have thought some version of these statements, and you certainly said them over time. And these are statements or ideas or thoughts that we have that are associated when someone says, hey, you should try this. So someone walks up to you and they say, hey, have you ever thought about implementing this into your life? Have you ever thought about trying this? And it might have something to do with your house. It might have something to do with your health. It might have something to do with like adding, information and skill to your job. It might have something to do with relationships. But when people come up to you and they say, have you thought about this? Are you going to try this? Would you be willing to implement this? Oftentimes, this is what we say or we think or we feel. And we go like this, like, well, is this going to be hard? Like, how difficult is this going to be? Are the results guaranteed? Is it gonna go quick? Is this gonna require sacrifice? Am I gonna have to change a lot? What we're really asking is like in the proposition of the thing that they're suggesting and the thing that they want us to do, we're asking like, what's the real cost on our life going to be? Because if the cost is high, we're probably not very interested. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. In our culture, in our context, there is something that is marketed and sold to us all the time. There's a reality in our world, and here's what it is. You and I are trained for easy and instant. We are trained for easy and instant. We look for everything to be quick and simple and fast and easy, and we are marketed to this so often. In fact, the easier and the quicker it is, the louder the marketing is. You won't have to even work out. You won't have to change anything about the way you exercise. It is guaranteed that you will make money in the first week, in the first quarter. Oh, don't worry, you won't have to change any of your reading habits. Like, we sell this to people because we are trained to go, if it's easy and it's instant, we want it. We get after this so much. Oh, you'll get the benefits right away. It won't be that difficult. It won't be that hard. You won't have to change anything. We market this in our culture like to the point where we're like fast food, on-demand television, right? We come to a place where we look and we go, if I don't want to bake it, let me just microwave it as fast as I can. You can't stand when people don't text you back immediately. Well, they didn't have it in the store. Well, I'll just buy it online right fast. And God forbid our Wi-Fi goes at all slow. Right? Because we want it to be easy and we want it to be instant, and we chase that in everything. We have a culture, a world that can almost satisfy any of our desires almost immediately. And so what we do is we think like this: if I want it, and I want it now. And the problem with that is that way of living, this cultural mandate that exists in our soul so often, it syringes and sucks out of life one of the most important things that makes things real and beneficial. It takes out one of the things that makes things great in life. And that thing that is like a secret weapon, that's like a secret sauce to make things incredible, is this value. It's that time is a secret weapon in development. That time is a secret weapon in development. And we live in a world that doesn't have time for time because we want it easy and we want it instant. And the problem with time is it takes time. And yet you know this, like, yep, you can get the pill and you can lose all the weight and it'll happen easy and it'll happen instant. But you know what is better for you is to learn to control portions and exercise. I'll fight anyone in our church who wants to argue with me that says that microwave ribs are somehow better than slow cooked smoked rib for 6 hours. In the name of Jesus, amen. I mean, I'll fist fight you with that. Like you know this. You know that this is how your 401k actually works, is the idea of compound interest, that time is the secret weapon to development. Time is what makes wine great. It's what makes cheese great. It's what makes your baseball glove great. It's what makes your favorite hat awesome. But we live in a culture that says easy and instant, and so we work so hard to have to do anything that takes time. And you know this. You know this because things are hard and difficult and they're not easy and instant. You know what many of us do is we quit. We quit, we stop. And this isn't rocket science. You've experienced this in any area of your life. What happens is you can't build up what you ultimately end up walking away from. You can't build up what you walk away from. So you say, I want to have a great business. Well, most businesses fail. Why? Well, because the cash doesn't come in and because it's hard. And then what do? We quit. The ribs will never taste the way that they're going to taste if you pull them out of the smoker because you get bored and you just throw them into the microwave and you try to, it'll never work. Your 401k won't become what it can become if you just pull it out and say, I'm going to go spend all of the money. We quit over and over and over. You'll never get to the goal that you have set with your running if you stop and you walk away from it. You can't build what you walk away from. And some of you, rightfully so, are thinking, what the heck does this have to do with people skills? It's got everything to do with people skills. Because listen to me, please hear this. For some of us, the reason our relationships are shallow and empty and not meaningful and not enriching and not what they could be is because we walk away from any relationship that doesn't get awesome fast. And relationships are not, they're not 3-minute mac and cheese guys. They take time. And one of the secret ingredients to real, meaningful, deep, healthy, God-honoring relationships is that we stay committed and we give it time. Your friendships, your marriage, your parenting, your biblical community, and those you are trying to deeply reach for the gospel will never, ever, ever happen the way that they could if you don't give it time. I want to think about this people skill as it's related to giving it time. And really, this is the principle of loyalty, sticking with it and not quitting and not bailing. You know, as I was thinking about this and studying for this, I had to wrestle with, I want to make sure that loyalty, this way that I'm going to talk about it this weekend, is really in the Bible and it's not just my bias. Because I do need to tell you that my natural bias is I'm a very loyal person. It probably comes from the way that I was raised in the home that I grew up in, that's just kind of like a value my parents have had and they've instilled in me. But if you don't believe I'm a loyal person, like I've been a 3-sport fan of the Cleveland teams for my whole life. And unless you're a masochist, you don't do that, right? Because you're not doing that because they win and you're a front runner. Like you're doing that because you're faithful and you're loyal. I've been at this church for almost 20 years, and I don't mean this any other way than to say I've had options. I could have left many times. I don't want to. I want to be here and stay here and build and be about this. I'm married to my wife for almost 23 years. I've got 4 kids, the oldest being 18, that I try to be invested in and be there and be loyal and be faithful. And so loyalty is something that is in my bones. I care about it. I value it. I'm biased towards it. I know that. So I've had to ask, like, is it really in the text? Well, here's what I know, that one of the confident reasons I can say it's in the text is that whenever there is a character trait that's in the heart of God, it's in the text. And when you look at God and you read about God and you read the scriptures, I dare anyone to read the Bible to understand Christianity and tell me that God isn't loyal towards us. That God isn't faithful to us. That God, listen to me, that God has had option after option to walk away from us. And he never does. And we'll circle back to this near the end, but I just want to tell you that this notion I'm talking about, it's not just like pop psychology or Keith's idea. It's something that we see in the pages of Scripture. I also want to say this before we get into the text. I know that when I'm talking about loyalty and I'm talking about staying in relationships, that for some of you, this is like really hard and difficult to hear, because the truth is you hear this through the lens of you're in or have been in abusive relationships. And I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about abusive relationships. I'm not talking about criminality. I'm not talking about physical abuse. And I'm not talking about that. Which, by the way, if that's you and you're navigating any of that, please know that the Lord sees you, that this church sees you, that we want to help you and we want to walk through that with you. But I also want to say this, man, I think sometimes, while there are some that are absolutely dealing with abuse and criminal realities, there are some of us that we want to label relationships abusive, and we're misusing that word. We misuse that word in a way that actually devalues the people who are experiencing abuse. We need to be very hesitant to just throw that word out and label things with it. And so know that when I'm talking about this, I'm not talking about abusive relationships. I'm not talking about relationships that have crime in them. I'm talking about the rest of us, our normal relationships as we navigate life. If you've got a Bible, I want you to turn to the book of Ruth in the Old Testament. The book of Ruth in the Old Testament. And this may be not a book you're familiar with. That's okay. Just go to the table of contents, search it. We're gonna land in Ruth chapter 1. I've taught this before over the years. Actually, a few of us have over my time here. And I just mean this from my heart. Like every single time I look at this passage, like my passion to want to be loyal grows, because this is just such a beautiful, beautiful passage that teaches this principle, this people skill that we're talking about. Let me set the context for Ruth chapter 1. There was a famine in Bethlehem in Israel, and people left, and one family particularly left with this husband named Eli, and he left with his wife Naomi, and they went to Moab. And they were in Moab, and while they were in Moab, they had two sons, and their two sons met two Moabite women who were from the town, and they got married. And over the course of 10 years, Eli dies, so the father dies, the husband of Naomi dies, and then the first son dies, and then the second son dies. And so now what's left is Naomi and her two daughter-in-laws. And she's heard that things are better back in Bethlehem, and so she's decided to take the journey. Now, this journey by foot would have been about a 7 to 10 day journey. And so the three of them have decided to journey back, and they're gonna go back to Bethlehem, and the two daughters-in-law are gonna leave their hometown and go with their mother-in-law, and they're going to move forward. And so we pick up the conversation as they're on this journey, the three of them together. And so here's what the text says in Ruth chapter 1, beginning in verse 8. Then Naomi, this is the mother, said to her two daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home." So she says, however far they're on in the journey, they pull over the caravan and they say, hey, let's just talk. Okay, hey, listen, just go back home. Stop coming with me, just go home. Now, you might think that this comes from like a harsh place, that she's just trying to get rid of them. She doesn't want anything to do with them. That's not her spirit at all. We'll see that in a second. Some of you are like, I wish my in-laws would tell me to go home. I'd go home in a hurry, right? Like, that's not what's going on here. It's not what's going on here. She actually has really good motives for them. Here's what the text says. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown kindness. The word kindness here in the original language is the word hesed. It's a word that's used to describe the love and character of God. It's this very big, beautiful, rich word about the character of God. And she says, I want that to happen for you guys. May the Lord show you kindness. If you've shown kindness to your dead husbands and me, you've been great to our family. You've been faithful and loyal and you've stuck it out. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband. Naomi says, listen, I know how it works. I know what our culture says. Your future, your preferred future is built on the fact that you'll go back home, you'll get another husband, you'll have children. That's how you'll matter in life. You don't matter in life if you're a widow. You don't matter in life if you don't have kids in this culture. So just go home, find another husband, have kids. This is what I am asking for you. And so then the story moves forward. Then she kissed them goodbye and they wept aloud. So she says, just go. It looks like they're gonna leave and everybody weeps. And then the girls look and the text says, and then they said to her, we will go back with you to your people. No, Mom, we're coming with you. We're going to Bethlehem. We're gonna stick in the journey. Let's get the caravan moving. Let's go. Then Naomi responds. But Naomi said, return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I gonna have any more sons who could become your husbands? She's like, ladies, do the mental math. I can't have any more boys. It's not happening. Why would you follow me? There's nothing in this for you. It's not beneficial. The better life is to go back to Moab. Come on, think it out. What are you doing? She continues to speak to them. Return home, my daughters. And it's almost like here, she kind of goes into like this existential crisis of processing her own life out loud. I'm too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it is more bitter for me than for you because the Lord's hand has turned against me. Guys, it's not in the cards. This is hard on me. It's not gonna help me. Just go home. Just go back to Moab. This is the second time, please leave. The story continues in the dialogue. At this, they wept aloud. Then Orpah, insert Oprah joke, Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye. So Orpah, one of the daughter-in-laws, says, okay, Mom, I'm going home. But, But Ruth clung to her. Ruth clung to her. This word clung is actually the word that they use to describe covenant marriage. It's the word that says, I ain't going anywhere. I am in it. You can push me away. You can say what you want, but I am not moving. Ruth says, I don't care what my sister does. I don't care what Orpah does. I am staying right here. And she clings to Naomi. Story goes on. Look, said Naomi, your sister-in-law is going back with her people and her gods. Go back with her. Third time, Naomi says, go. And can we also just for a second, put skin on Naomi's life at this point? Naomi, in a very short time, has lost her husband, her first son, her second son. She's about to lose her daughter-in-laws, and she's lost all of her friends in Moab. Naomi's not had it great. And yet even Naomi's still like, I know this is better for you. And she says the third time, listen, your sister's going back, just go back. And then here's what happens, ready? And Ruth replied, this is just, Ruth gets backbones. She looks at her and she says, don't urge me to leave you don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. And then listen to this. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Now, I dare you to tell me that you wish somebody wouldn't say that about the way they feel about you. Tell me we don't all long for someone to look and go, I don't care what the cards say. I don't care what life says. I don't care what's easier and what's better for me. I'm not moving. I love you. I'm with you. I'm going where you're going. I'm worshiping who you're worshiping. In fact, I'm dying where you die, and I will be buried next to you. Mom, I love you. I'm staying. Tell me you don't wish someone would say that to you. And tell me you don't wish you were that kind of person. That you would have that in you to be able to look at people and say, I know what's hard. I don't care. I am staying with you. In fact, Ruth goes, you know what? I'll just put a promise on this bet. Look at what she says next. She goes, may the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me. Mom, I'm so into this. I am so committed to this that if I back out on it, the Lord should strike me dead. I'm not going anywhere. And then the most human response ever from Naomi after this impassioned speech from Ruth. When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. She's like, well, I guess she's coming. I'm not going to argue with her anymore. They had already over 10 years in relationship together, the text tells us. And now Ruth says, I'm in it for more. In fact, I'm in it to the end. I'm committed. I want this relationship to be everything that it could be. Yes, Mom, there's lots of reasons to go back. My financial future, my preferred future, kids, safety, security, all of it. Better options exist. But I'm not choosing those. I choose you. And by choosing you, I'm going to introduce into the relationship the thing that'll make this be incredible and special. Commitment and time. And no matter what happens, I'm not leaving, I'm not moving, I'm staying. Friends, relationships are hard. They're messy. People don't give us what we thought they were going to give us. We don't give them what they thought we were going to give them. People let us down. People disappoint us. People fail. People screw up. People hurt us. But there is a people skill that has the ability to change you and I's life with the relationships around us. And the people skill that Ruth teaches us this week that I want us to consider is that you and I would learn to do this as it relates to the way we engage people, that we learn to stick it out. That we learn to stick it out. that we learn to fight through it and stay with it. Ruth says, I am not going anywhere. And this principle of saying, I'll stick it out, is so easy to say, but it's a skill to do. I mean, isn't this what marriage is built on? For better, for worse, for sickness or health, for rich or for poor, whatever you bring into this and whatever I find out about you, I'm not going anywhere because I'm committed to sticking it out. I know there's reasons to bail. I know there are things that I could do to move on, but I'm not going to. I'm going to stick it out. And again, this is why our relationships are often so flimsy and shallow. Is because when it gets hard, when it gets complicated, when things change a little bit, we quit. Isn't there just some type of beauty to people who have seen you go through trial and seen you go through triumph, and they've been with you the whole time? Those of us that we're old enough to where like we've seen our friends have kids, and then we've seen those kids be raised, and then they got married and they had kids, and we were with it the whole time, and we got to invest in that, and we got to pray for that, and we got to walk with them through that. There's a beauty to that you can't have if you don't give it time. The beauty of holding your friend's hand as their parents pass away and you were with them through that moment, but you stay together through life until one of you someday is on your deathbed and they're holding your hand. The beauty of sticking it out. We say, I don't really know that this is really all in the text, but it's all over the idea of love. Like love is what lifts or limits our ability to influence. This is how we're known. And when the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 13 talks about love, you know, the passage is read at a bunch of weddings. At the end, what does he say about love? He says, love always perseveres. It always hopes. It always looks at the relationship and says, I'm sticking it out. Paul in Ephesians chapter 4, when he looks at love, he says love is patient. Love, you know what it does? It's long suffering. Love bears with one another. But we can't do that when we want easy and instant. And we can't build up what we walk away from, and we can't introduce time when we quit because we don't stick it out. So here's what happens real time, all right? Over the last few weekends, we did the whole ping pong ball thing for like who's gonna be one of your two that you wanna see reach for Jesus, and I'm committed to praying for them every day at 2. So you work with Tom and you picked Tom. You got the ping pong ball and you wrote, Tom, dropped it, Tom. I'm gonna pray for Tom. I'm gonna love for Tom. I'm gonna serve Tom. I care about Tom. You start hanging out with Tom. Tom's not that cool. He's kind of a bummer, to be honest. You start trying to go to lunch with Tom, you come back, you're like, that wasn't good. You start looking at Tom's work, you're like, Tom doesn't even work that hard. You try to talk to Tom about things, you're like, man, we don't even have that much common interest. Like, I try to talk with Tom about stuff, and then you're like, can I get another ping pong ball, change the names? I don't want to use Tom anymore. And so then you know what happens? If you've been reading the book we've been talking about how to share your faith in the whole 3 circles, and it says one of the ways that we get to share our faith is when people share their pains and their struggles with us, we get to take them and have a conversation from everyday life about the Lord. But Tom will never ever tell you about the trials in his life if you don't give that relationship time and keep investing. Tom will never share a prayer request with you if you don't give it time and you stick with it. You're never gonna hear about Tom's struggles in his parenting, or Tom's struggles in his marriage, or Tom's struggles in his finances. And you're never gonna hear about any of that, because the moment the relationship with Tom didn't give you everything that you thought it was gonna be, you bail, and you can't build up what you walk away from, and you didn't give it time. So you know what you lost with Tom because you didn't give it time and you didn't stick it out? You lost influence. And for every Tom and Terry in our life, there's been moments of opportunity for us to be able to build into and pour in their life, but we quit. And if you think I'm like not for real, just in your life for a minute, think about the people that have been with you. Like the ride or die people that have been with you, whether it's your parents or your spouse or a friend or someone in this church who has seen you be a marvel and they've seen you be a moron. They've seen you win, they've seen you lose, they've seen you laugh, they've seen you cry. And in all of it, they were right there. They stuck it out. They stuck it out. And here's what you know about those people. They have influence in your life because they didn't go anywhere. They didn't bail. Ruth looks at Naomi. I don't care what would be easier. I don't even care what might serve me better. I am going with you. I'm sticking it out. How do we do that? How do you actually live this out in real time where you say, okay, I want to do this. I want this people skill. What are the skills inside of the skill? Well, these are in no particular order, and some of these are going to be more palatable and easier than others, but they are all necessary. We see them in Ruth and Naomi. The first thing that if you're going to say, I'm going to have the people skill to stick it out, the first skill that you're going to need that is you're going to have to engage necessary conflict. Right off the jump in this moment, I guess it's kind of off the jump in this conversation. It's at least 10 years in, but we see Ruth engage the conflict. Naomi, knock it off. You've said it to me 3 times. I'm not going anywhere. She confronts it back and steps into the fight and says, I am staying. She has this impassioned speech where she says, I'm going to die where you die. I'm not moving. I'm not going anywhere. I know I can make a better play. I know there's kids in financial security. I'm not going anywhere. And she has the fight. Come on, in relationships, conflicts come in all shapes and sizes. But if we're gonna have real relationships, we're gonna have to be able to deal with conflict. Arguably, one of the greatest boxers of all time is Floyd Mayweather. Some people would debate if he's where he's at, but his record shows it. He was incredible. And what made Floyd Mayweather an incredible boxer was you couldn't hit him. He was so fast, he was so quick, he was so agile, and his defensive skills and footwork were so good, he just never got caught in big ways to get knocked out. Now, if you know Floyd Mayweather, he's as obnoxious as the day is long. And he's as arrogant as the day is long. But I was listening to an interview with him one time where even Floyd said, while I never got hit really hard to get knocked out, he said, I was in the ring enough that I did get caught a few times. I did get hit. And Floyd's point was if you fight long enough and if you stay in the ring long enough, you're gonna get punched. The only way not to get punched is to never get in the ring. The only way to avoid conflict in relationships is to never have relationships, to never get in the ring. So if you say, I want meaningful relationships, I want purposeful, long-lasting relationships, I want influence in relationships, well then if you're gonna do that and you're gonna stick it out, you're going to have to learn to do the hard. You're gonna have to go have hard conversations. What you said there hurt me. You're gonna have to say you're sorry. You're gonna have to forgive. You're gonna have to be forgiven. You're gonna have to seek clarity. You're gonna have to seek unity. You're going to have to engage it. And some of you are like, conflict? I love conflict. You always want conflict. You're looking for conflict. You're the fighter. And your problem is you need to chill. Others of you, you're such big people pleasers, you never engage the conflict. You hide and you run and you're a turtle in the relationship, and you need to step up and realize you need to say it out loud. But all of us have to learn how to engage it. If we're gonna say, I'm gonna stick it out, then you're gonna have to learn to fight. Some people say, oh man, my parents were great. They never fought in front of me. That's terrible. You know what's awesome is when your parents fight in front of you and they show you how to fight. When they show you what godly conflict resolution looks like. Hey, I'm saying it. She's saying it. We're dealing with it. I was wrong. I forgive you. Do you forgive me? Are we good? Can we speak now in grace and mercy in this? If you want a relationship that's gonna last, you have to do this. And let's be honest. For some of us, this is why we're on marriage 2. This is why we're on marriage 3. This is why we bail on our friends. This is why we don't talk to our parents. Because we never learned how to do this. We have to learn how to engage necessary conflict. Ruth looked at Naomi and said, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna talk it out. We're gonna figure it out. And here's what I'm committed to. Number two, if you're gonna learn to stick it out, you're gonna have to resist other options. Again, Ruth had options. She probably had a better option. She could have maybe even gone to Bethlehem and then just said, I'm done. I'll just see what this new city's got. And she could have moved on from Naomi. Potentially even better plays. But at some point she said, I'm gonna stick with what I chose. Lots of people over my years at Grace have built new homes. And whenever I say, how's the home building process going? You're building a home. I always hear two things. One about how long it takes, but the other one is I always hear this. Man, there's just so many options. So many options for fixtures and flooring and decorations and all these things. And so you work through the options, and then you make choices. And you go, this is what we're gonna do with the floor, this is what we're gonna do with the tile and the kitchen and the cupboards, and you make the decision. Tell your builder, do that. And then you go to someone else's house. And you're like, man, I like their kitchen. Then you get on Pinterest. You just go to bed. Man, I wish we had chosen that. And you pick up a decor magazine. Man, why didn't I think it? And you know what you do? You sit there and think, I want to tell the builder to change. I want to tell the builder, can we change? Rather than going, no, I picked that first thing for a reason. I'm sticking with it. Listen, there's a reason you said I do to your spouse. Stop looking at better options. Go back to why you said yes. You fathered those kids, or you brought those kids into the world as their mother. So parent them and stop looking for better options to fulfill yourself. You chose those friends and you jumped into that friend circle. Stop jumping friend circles to find the perfect friend circle. They don't exist. Stick it out. Some of you around Grace, you're like, this small group, those people are idiots. Guess what the next group's full of? Idiots. I pastor here, I know them all. They're all idiots, right? They're all just sinful, flawed people. You're like, I'll go from ministry to ministry. No, stick it out. I'll make it real personal. Some of you go from church to church. And you know what the next church is full of? Screwed up people who aren't perfect either. It's full of a leader who's flawed. It's full of mistakes. Instead, stick around and stick it out and watch what happens over time. We know this. Even the world knows this. Guys like Tony Robbins will say, man, we all overestimate what we can do in 1 year and underestimate what we can do in 5 years. Stop chasing the options and stick around. Say, I'm gonna stay here and see what goes on. Ruth said, I know I could go back. No, I'm with you. We figure out how to engage conflict. We resist the better options. Number 3, we have to come to the place where we own our part. Ruth said, I'm in. I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna make the rest of the journey to Bethlehem. I'm gonna be buried where you're buried. I'll go buy the plots. Will the Lord come and get me if I change? Again, I know this skill happens because you choose people and you start relationships and you get involved in that thing and you go are a part of that thing at work, and then it's not what you thought it was gonna be, and it's difficult and it's discouraging and they're not great and they're not funny and they're not easy and it's hard, and so you wanna quit. But own your part. Maybe you've been to like a work retreat or camp or something back in college where you had to do relay races where it was just the fun ones, the wheelbarrow race and the sack race, but one of them is the 3-legged race where 2 of you get side by side and then you tie your legs together and then you have to go together and you have to figure that out. And if you've ever done that, you realize I can't go left and they go right. I can't go backwards and they go forward. We have to move in the same direction. Listen to me, this is gonna sting a little bit. For some of you, the reason why your relationship with those people has broken down, it's not their fault, it's yours. Because you pulled away. You went the opposite direction. You stopped praying, you stopped planning, you stopped giving it time, you stopped giving it energy, you stopped sending text, you stopped caring. Why? God, it just didn't work, it wasn't. Own your part. even in marriage, we can be still in the marriage and not own our part. We can be present at home and not present at home. With our kids, we can be there, but not be parenting, own our part. I said I'd be in this group, own your part. I said I'd be your friend, own this part. I said I'd be committed in this marriage, own my part. And recognize that sometimes your passions and affections have shifted and changed in a way that have made you pull away. You've got to own your part. Ruth was gonna have to keep her side of the bargain. I said, I'm in, I'm not going anywhere. And for that to work, she was going to have to keep walking in the same direction Naomi was. Stick it out. Number 4, the last thing we've got to do is we've got to consider the potential. Ruth played the long game here. She saw something bigger than the moment. Because when we only see the moment or just the successive moments, we can't see everything that could be. We don't see the full potential. You know, a sculptor doesn't see clay, they see the sculpture. A painter doesn't see canvas, they see the painting. An interior designer doesn't see a living room, they see an environment. They see what could be if you gave it time and attention. Sometimes you have to look at that relationship and go, I know what it is now, but what could it be? I see what my relationship with my kids is now, but what could it be? I see what that friend circle is like right now, but what could it be? And it will never get there if you quit. And it's not easy and it's not instant, but you can't build what you walk away from, so stick it out. Which means part of it is you have to keep telling yourself, I know what could be, I know what could be, I know what could be, and I'm gonna keep working towards that. I'm gonna fall in love with the journey of seeing what might happen. Now again, I said this earlier, but I just wanna bring it back to this because I think it's so important. This notion of seeing relationship and how we could engage it, it's not just like a people skill, it's just an idea that we have and it's like, yep, that's great to have. This is something that's rooted in the character of God and the way that God engages us. In your notes, I put it this way, that the Lord and the way that he's been with you, the Lord sticks it out with you. The conflict that you have against him is sin, and he came and redeemed you and chased you and pursued you. God had the options if he doesn't need us, but yet he chose to want to be in relationship with us. He more than owned his part. He left heaven, took on flesh, went to a cross, died, rose again, and then he saw our potential. He saw sinful people who could be sons and daughters of God. And he said, I'll do all the work to make it happen. And then he said, I know it'll happen. You'll get in relationship with me, but you'll still start to drift. And he said, I'll never leave or forsake you. What I've begun in you, I promise I will bring it to completion. Because even as much as we rebel and struggle and fight and pursue ourselves, God looks at us and he goes, I'm sticking it out with you. What would it look like if we learned to do that with each other? Put this people skill to work this week. A memorable way to say this, hard to do, but your homework assignment for all of us, and this is an all play, you don't have to be a Christian to do this, but certainly if you're a follower of Jesus, I want to invite you to do this week. What I want you to do is to pick and stick. Pick one relationship that you have started to drift from and say, I'm sticking it out. Pick one relationship where you say, I've started to go, but nope, I'm gonna step into the conflict. I'm gonna own my part. I'm gonna consider the potential. I'm gonna not chase other options. I'm gonna pick and stick. Just one relationship that I'm gonna pick and I'm gonna stick it out with. Relationships are hard, they're just tough. They're annoying because they take work and they take time and people are challenging. And yet as it relates to anything in life, when we think about things that are hard and difficult and we want to quit, I'm reminded of the great theologian Dory in Finding Nemo, who said to Nemo, just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Look, I know your marriage. I know. Just keep swimming. I know that the person at work, it's not going and you're not feeling it. Just keep swimming. I know that maybe your relationship with your son-in-law or daughter-in-law isn't what you, just keep swimming. Like, stick it out. Here's one of the things I've learned in my Christian faith is that sometimes one of the most important things to do in relationships is just keep showing up. And what you don't know is that on the other side of you showing up, what God might be doing in their heart. So just stick it out. Stay present. Just stick with it and see what God may do. God is a God who works and changes and moves, and sometimes all he needs and what he's using is you just to stay with it. So people skill this week, stick it out. You'll go where they'll go. You'll live, you'll die where they'll die. You'll hang out with them, you'll stay with them. You'll fight through all the challenges that would get you to want to leave. Let's pray together. God, I just want to thank you that you don't quit on us. That every time we start to bail, or we do bail, or we reject, or we run away, you stay with us. And I pray that same character of hoping and persevering and long suffering that's inside of you would transfer to the way that we chase people. That our love for people would persevere and hope. That it would bear with one another. And then we would just keep swimming. We would stick it out. We would just keep showing up because we believe what you can do through that. I pray for a person right now who they feel the Spirit telling them this is the relationship they need to pick and stick with. I pray that this week you would give them the strength to do that. We pray us all in the name of Jesus. Amen.